Joining me now is Democratic Senator Chris Coons. He sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. He is calling for an oversight hearing into the use of this system and the discussion of war plans. Senator, thanks so much for taking the time this evening.
Thank you. Great to be on with you again, Jim.
So first, I want to ask you a very basic question. When you have dealt with classified information or information about war operations, military operations that includes information about timing, targets, etc., is that ever not classified information?
No. I routinely access highly classified information at what's called a SCIF, which is a secure facility. Every senator and every cabinet official, everyone who was on that signal chat has regular access both to computer systems and phone systems and to rooms that are specifically designed for the handling of highly classified information. So, look, let's be blunt. The fact that these folks were using a commercially available, unsecure system to communicate about an imminent attack on another country, and then, allegedly, Secretary Hegseth conveyed concrete and specific war plans about what the targets were, what munitions were being used, what individuals were being targeted. This is a shocking breach of the most basic requirements of handling classified information. There's not a single career military officer whose career could survive a moment like this. And frankly, Jim, I've been to surprise parties that were better at keeping the surprise, at keeping secrets, than this event.
Listen, I had a security clearance when I served in government, and I know the restrictions were go to the SCIF to read that kind of information. Certainly don't play around on it on your phone. Were U.S. service members put at risk as a result of this, given that it had timing, location, target, assets? If the Houthis presumably got such information in advance, could they not have put U.S. forces in danger?
They could, and that's why I think we need an oversight hearing so that we know what exactly was shared. Claims are being made now by President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and others that there wasn't classified information shared. Well, I respect that the editor of The Atlantic was very careful in what he didn't publish. Now that they're alleging none of it was classified, then why can't they share, why can't this administration or Secretary Hegseth share a transcript of everything that was shared on this signal channel? My strong hunch is because it does include highly classified and sensitive information. This would be the point of an oversight hearing, to understand how it happened, whether service members were put at risk, and to make sure it doesn't happen again. Frankly, on some level, our country got lucky that the person who was inadvertently included in this signal chat was someone who was a well-intentioned journalist, not a hostile foreign agent. And recently, the Pentagon sent around a warning about the lack of security of signal as a way to communicate for folks who are in leadership in the military.
You're calling for an oversight hearing. Sad fact is,
yes,
from your perspective, Democrats do not have a majority in the Senate or in the House. As you know, Democrats have come under criticism for speaking criticism of this administration's moves, but not doing anything about it. And I wonder, what will Democrats do now to get an outcome? Can you do something now to get an outcome?
So there's limits to what we can do. Yes, we can send a letter to the inspectors general. We can demand a hearing. We can hold up votes on the floor. But without Republicans stepping forward and taking some responsibility for their role as leaders on the relevant committees, on the Armed Services Committee, the Intelligence Committee, the Appropriations Subcommittee for Defense, there's real limits to what we can do to hold accountable an administration, a Republican administration, if they choose to look the other way.
I want to ask you, given your role on the Foreign Relations Committee on Ukraine, over the weekend, the president's Russian envoy, Steve Witkoff, not unlike the president himself, we should say, was parroting Russian talking points, full bore, on a whole host of issues around the Ukraine war, including the cause of the war, staged elections in Russian-occupied territory, etc. From your perspective, is this administration now, in effect, supporting Russia's not just view of this war, but interests as it pursues a peace agreement to end it?
Well, that was the alarming implication of some of the things that he said over the weekend, literally saying, well, there's two sides to every conflict. In this particular conflict, more sharply than any other in my lifetime? I don't think that's the case at all. Putin's the aggressor. Russia invaded. They literally kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children. They committed war crimes. They raped and massacred innocent civilians. And they continue to attack energy infrastructure and towns and villages all over Ukraine. Ukraine is the defender. Russia is the aggressor. And frankly, while the special envoy President Trump's appointed for this seems to be trying hard to find a neutral ground in order to better negotiate, to not name Putin as the aggressor and to suggest there's two sides to this conflict, I think goes too far, loses credibility for us with our vital European allies and partners who have borne the majority of the burden of arming and supporting Ukraine and welcoming millions of Ukrainian refugees into their countries. So I think the way you achieve peace through strength is by being strong, by calling out who is actually the aggressor, by threatening to go harder in support of Ukraine rather than trying to reach some false equivalency and hand the cards that Zelensky could be playing to Putin. When President Trump said in that White House confrontation, "You don't have the cards," to President Zelensky, that's because he'd already handed the key cards in this negotiation away to Vladimir Putin.
And then, of course, proceeded to take the intelligence sharing cards away from Ukraine for a period of time as well. Senator Chris Coons, we do appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.